I didn't think much of it at first. Last summer, I decided to take a break from work. I wanted to reconnect with nature, away from the noise of the city. So I packed my gear and headed to Redwood National Park. I felt excited. This was my chance to recharge. I found a perfect spot to set up my tent. It was sunny, surrounded by tall trees. I made a campfire and settled in. The flames cracked and the smoke curled into the air. I thought this long weekend would be fantastic. Little did I know, it would haunt me. On the second night, as I lay in my tent, the night was calm, but then I heard something weird. At first, I thought it was distant fireworks. I smiled to myself, thinking how nice it was. But soon, I heard laughter too. It echoed through the trees. It felt strange, almost wrong. The laughter seemed off, like it carried too far. I tried to ignore it, I really did. But each night, it got louder. It was like a game, teasing me. Rustling sounds came from outside my tent. I sat up, eyes wide, straining to see. Was something out there? I was scared, but didn't want to admit it. My heart raced every time. One morning, I noticed odd patterns in the dirt around my tent. They weren't there when I set up. I knelt down to look. They looked like tiny footprints. Maybe a family camped here before, I thought. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. The shadows from the trees felt longer, like they wanted to creep closer to me. As sunset approached on that last night, I wanted to leave. The feeling of being watched grew stronger. I kept catching glimpses of movement in the corner of my eye. I would turn quickly, but nothing was there. Just trees. Just shadows. I couldn't shake it off. The next morning, I packed up quickly. I felt uneasy. When I walked a bit off, I found a small campfire still smoldering in the woods. My stomach dropped. I was alone out here. Who had made this fire? Panic hit me. I hurried to gather my things, feeling cold inside. It was time to go. People say, it's all in your head. Maybe they're right, but as I left that campsite, fear clung to me. I couldn't shake the laughter echoing in my mind. I can still hear it, haunting me. I never went camping alone again. I returned to the city, but the laughter followed me. Sometimes in quiet moments, I could almost hear it ringing in my ears. It wasn't just a sound, it was a memory that twisted in my mind, leaving behind threads of fear. Weeks passed after that trip, and summer turned to fall. I tried to settle back into my routine. I got back to work, met friends, and distracted myself. But the memories haunted me. Every time I heard laughter, I froze. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, lurking. Then one evening, my friend Mark invited me to a weekend camping trip. It was supposed to be fun, his way of coaxing me back into the great outdoors. I hesitated, but I felt anxious to face my fears. Maybe this was how I'd find closure. So, I agreed. When we arrived at Pinecrest Lake, my heart raced. It reminded me too much of Redwood. The tall trees towered over us, whispering in the wind. I felt like I was stepping back into the unknown. That first night felt different. It was beautiful. Stars sprinkled across the sky and a gentle breeze through the trees. We set up camp and shared stories around the fire. I laughed along with the others, but a knot twisted in my stomach. I couldn't shake the memories. Later, while everyone slept, I lay in my sleeping bag, wide awake. The night was too still. That's when I heard it. A giggle, soft and distant, floating through the trees. My breath caught. I sat up, straining to listen. Was it real, or was it just my imagination? I waited, tension building in my chest. Another laugh echoed, closer this time. I slipped out of my bag and slowly unzipped the tent. The cool air hit my face. Heart pounding, I stepped outside, peering into the darkness. "Mark?" I whispered, but no one answered. Most of the campsite was quiet, save for the sounds of the night. I took a cautious step towards the noise, a part of me hoping I was just dreaming. But as I walked, I felt that same eerie feeling creeping in, just like before. Then I saw it. A flicker of movement just beyond the tree line. My heart dropped. It looked like a shadow dancing,
illuminated by the faint, dying embers of our campfire. I thought maybe it was another camper, just playing around. But as I approached, another laugh pierced the night air, sharp and unsettling. That's when I froze. Panic surged in me as I realized the laughter wasn't coming from a friendly group. It was twisted, wrong. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. I was caught between instincts. Curiosity and fear battled within me. Then everything changed. Out of the shadows stepped a figure, a face partially hidden in the darkness. I couldn't see it clearly, but something about it felt off. Their laugh echoed again, sending shivers down my spine. I turned and fled back to the tent, my mind racing. I needed to warn Mark. But that laughter lingered, winding its way back into my thoughts. What had I stumbled into? I bolted inside the tent, my heart racing like a wild animal. My hands trembled as I shook Mark awake. "Mark, wake up," I hissed, trying to keep my voice low. He blinked a few times, clearly confused. "What's wrong?" he mumbled, still half asleep. "There's something out there," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I heard laughter. It wasn't normal, Mark. We need to check it out." He groaned, rubbing his eyes. "It's probably just some campers messing around. Come on, it's late." "I swear it didn't sound right," I insisted. "It's not just kids. It felt sinister." Finally, Mark pushed off his sleeping bag and sat up. I could see the skepticism in his eyes, but a flicker of concern crossed his face. We both heard it then. A low giggle echoed again outside, clawing its way into my mind.
"Okay, let's go take a look," he said reluctantly. We crept out into the night, the air thick with tension. The campsite was eerily quiet now, the fire's glow casting flickering shadows around us. I scanned the area, my pulse quickening. Every snapped twig made me jump. "See? There's nothing here," Mark said, trying to reassure me, but I could feel his unease. Then it happened. A flicker of movement darted among the trees. My breath caught in my throat. I pointed toward the shadows. "There! Did you see that?" Mark squinted into the darkness but shook his head. "You're imagining things." Before I could respond, I heard it again. A laugh, sharper and taunting. It sent chills racing down my spine. I realized I couldn't just stand there. We needed to go back. We should head back to the tent. That's when I noticed a figure standing at the edge of the tree line. It was small, impossibly thin, with an unnaturally wide smile. It didn't move, just stared at us with hollow eyes. My insides twisted. "Mark," I whispered, voice shaking. "We need to—" But he was frozen. Fear had him in its grip. In that moment, the figure raised a hand, waving. I felt a scream building up inside me, but I couldn't find the voice to unleash it. The laughter echoed again, louder now, wrapping around us. Suddenly, the figure darted back into the woods, vanishing from sight. I grabbed Mark's arm, yanking him away. "Let's go!" We ran for the tent, hearts hammering. I flung the zipper open and we scrambled inside, pulling the flap tight. I was breathing hard, and I could see Mark's eyes wide, reflecting fear. "What was that?" he gasped. "I don't know," I said, my mind racing. "But it's not over. We have to find out who or what that was." Then I heard it again, the laughter, swirling around the campsite, as if it surrounded us. It was no longer distant. It was right outside. The laughter was clearer now, each echo a taunt that seeped into my bones. I pressed my back against the tent wall, heart racing. I could hear Mark's breath quickening beside me. "What do we do?" he whispered, barely able to keep his fear from spilling over. "We wait," I replied, even though every instinct screamed for action. I scanned the dim interior of the tent, searching for anything that could help us in case things went wrong. A flashlight lay coiled in the corner, and I grabbed it, flicking it on. The beam illuminated the small space, casting long shadows. With every giggle that pierced the night, my mind raced. Why would someone be playing pranks at this hour? We were miles from the nearest camp. Whatever was out there felt way too close, too alive. Mark shifted his weight, attempting to peer out through the mesh window. What if it's just a kid? Maybe they're lost, or... The laughter erupted again, higher this time, almost mocking. It was followed by a rustling sound nearby, just beyond the tent, breaking the stillness. I held the flashlight tightly, my knuckles white. "It's not just a kid."
"Should we call for help?" Mark suggested, though there was a tremor in his voice. I shrugged off the idea. Who would hear us out here? We need to stick together. A shadow passed by the entrance of the tent, causing my breath to hitch. I backed away from the flap, instinctively pulling Mark with me. He looked at me, eyes wide. "Did you see that?" he whispered. "Yeah, I did." I switched off the flashlight, plunging us into darkness. The laughter had stopped, leaving an unnerving silence. I held my breath, straining to hear. Then, there it was again, a soft, rhythmic knocking, like someone lightly tapping on the tent fabric. My heart raced as it continued, steady and deliberate. I felt a surge of panic that clawed at my insides. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a murmur. Mark nodded slowly, horror dawning across his face. "Should we say something?" "No." I could barely get the word out. I didn't want to draw attention to us. The knocking stopped. The silence was suffocating. Then came an unexpected sound, a small voice, barely a whisper at first. "Help me." My stomach lurched. It was childlike and soft, echoing the laughter from before. I wanted to bolt, but my feet felt glued to the ground. I'd never heard anything like it. "Mark, we can't stay here," I stammered. "Let's go out the back." "Are you crazy? We'll run right into whatever that is out there." I didn't have time to argue. I unzipped the back of the tent, the sound muffled in the thickening night air. The dark wilderness loomed behind us like an unwelcoming wall. With a deep breath, I slipped out and grabbed Mark's arm, pulling him out with me. The moment we exited, I spotted the figure again, a pale shape that seemed to shimmer like a reflection on water. It moved further into the woods, that monstrous grin turning toward us as it beckoned with a crooked finger. "This way. Help me." "Run," I shouted, dragging Mark behind me. As we sprinted away, another laugh echoed from behind us, swirling into the night. I glanced back one last time, and for a split second I saw its hollow eyes fixated on us, burning with a fierce light. Then everything went dark. I blinked, my eyes struggling to adjust to the thick blackness. I felt something brush against my leg, sending a surge of panic through me. "Mark," I called out, my voice trembling. There was no answer, a silence so profound it pressed against my ears. Clenching my fists, I reached for the flashlight I dropped in our frantic escape. My fingers grazed the cold metal and I gripped it tightly, flicking it back on. The beam pierced the darkness, but all I could see was an endless stretch of trees and the underbrush that surrounded us. "Where are you?" I whispered, dread pulling in my stomach. "Right here," Mark's voice came from the shadows, shaky but clear. I turned, relief washing over me. "What happened? I couldn't see anything." "I don't know. Everything just went dark."
We need to find a place to hide. Together we moved cautiously, step by step, the beam of the flashlight wavering as I swept it around, searching for any sign of the figure that had haunted us. There was no laughter now, only the distant rustle of leaves and the sound of our own breath. What felt like a minute stretched into an hour. Just when I thought we were alone, I heard a soft giggle, innocent and agonizingly familiar. "Help, please." "Not again," I muttered, my voice trembling. "It's still out here." Mark looked to me with wide eyes. "What do we do?" I glanced toward the direction of the voice. It sounded even closer, emerging again from the depths of the forest. "We have to move away from it," I said. "That's not a cry for help. It's trying to lure us in." "Are you sure?" he pressed. "It's trying to trick us, Mark," I insisted. The temperature around us seemed to drop. I could feel unease prickling at the back of my neck. "We go that way, uphill. Maybe we can find something there." Just as we started towards the incline, a sharp, eerie shriek erupted from behind us. It echoed through the trees, leaving my heart racing. I looked back, my breath hitching again. "Run!" I shouted, dragging Mark along, our feet slipping on the uneven ground. We dodged branches, ducked under low-hanging limbs, and didn't stop until we reached a clearing. The moonlight illuminated the area, revealing a startling sight. A small, broken-down cabin hidden among the trees. "Should we go in there?" Mark asked, panting. "It's better than out here," I replied, pointing to the door which hung askew. There was no time to think. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, dragging Mark in after me. The cabin was dark and musty, remnants of old furniture scattered about. I flipped on the flashlight, revealing a dusty table, a cracked mirror, and an old cot in one corner. There was an unsettling feeling here, like something had happened that kept the air thick with tension. I turned to Mark, my voice urgent. "We need to barricade the door if that thing follows us. Can you get the table?" He nodded, and we quickly shoved the table against the entrance, heartbeats echoing in the silence.
As we took a moment to catch our breath, I caught a glimpse of something at the window. It was a shadow, darting between trees. I felt my blood run cold. "Mark," I whispered, "I think it's found us." That's when I saw it again. The same pale figure, its twisted face pressing against the glass, eyes wide and hungry. I stumbled backward, my breath catching in my throat. The figure at the window was like nothing I had ever seen, its face gaunt and stretched, eyes gleaming with a hunger that sent a wave of terror through me. "Is it looking at us?" Mark's voice was barely above a whisper, trembling as he stood beside me. I couldn't take my eyes off the window. "I don't know, but we need to be quiet. If it hears us..." I trailed off, unable to finish the thought.
I turned the flashlight toward the window again, but it was gone. A breath of relief escaped me, but it was short-lived. Once more, that giggle echoed through the night. This time, from the back of the cabin, I felt the hair on my arm stand up. "What was that?" I choked out. Mark turned his head slowly, fear etched on his face. Maybe it's just a raccoon?" "That sounded way too human," I snapped, my voice shaking. I wished it were a raccoon, or anything else, really. The atmosphere felt charged, as if the cabin were holding its breath. I scanned the room, searching for anything I could use to defend ourselves. A rusty crowbar lay in a corner, and I moved towards it, reluctant to look away from the door. If that thing could find us, it could easily break through. Suddenly, a loud knock came from the door. The sound rattled the table we had pushed against it, and I froze, adrenaline surging through my veins. "It's here! Should we run?" Mark asked, his voice a mix of dread and uncertainty. "We can't," I said, my heart pounding. "We need to stay put until we know what it wants." Silence settled once more, stretching uncomfortably. I could feel every breath in the room, every heartbeat, as if we were both waiting for the other to do something. I glanced at Mark, and I could see realization registering in his eyes as he spotted the matching, shadowy figure that stood against the opposite window. "Look!" he gasped, pointing. Two faces now pressed against separate panes, each grotesque and leering, their grins wide, like they were sharing a joke. I could feel darkness creeping into the corners of my mind. Who were they? I tightened my grip on the crowbar. We can't let them in. But with each knock, the air thickened with malice. Then the shadows started to shift and change, moving back and forth, as if they were gauging us. "What do they want?" Mark's voice wavered. "Maybe they want us to play," I began, but the implications of my words sent chills down my spine. It felt like they were trying to lure us out, just like before. And right then, a new voice broke through the tension, cold and distorted. "Join us forever," it whispered, each syllable dripping with what I could only describe as sweet menace. I turned to Mark, frantic. "We have to get out of here, now!" I rushed for the door, but Mark grabbed my arm. "Wait! What if they're waiting outside?" Before I could answer, the cabin shuddered and the lights flickered. Just as I decided to act, everything went dark. I felt a soft tug in my sleeve, pulling me back. "Help!" the voice echoed again, more pleading than before. My heart raced as I stood frozen in place, trying to comprehend what was happening. I could hear Mark's uneven breaths beside me. "What's going on?" he asked, fear weaving through his tone. But I had no answers. All I knew was that we were not alone, and whatever awaited us outside was far worse than what we had faced so far. I flinched at the tug, my instincts screaming that whatever was behind me was not familiar. "Mark?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The sound of our own breaths was muffled by the darkness, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lurked in the corners of the cabin. "Yeah," he replied, barely audible, like he had moved farther away. "What was that?" Then the tug became a pull, stronger this time. I jerked my arm back, spinning around, my heart racing. It felt like being on the edge of a nightmare, uncertain and terrifying. I swung the flashlight, but the beam danced along the walls, revealing only shadows. "Stay next to me," I demanded, wishing I could sound braver. Suddenly, the faint glow of the flashlight flickered back to life. I saw Mark standing about 5 feet away, eyes wide with fear. He pointed to the back of the cabin. "There's something in the corner." I turned, and my breath hitched. The indistinct shape of something huddled low against the wall.
illuminated just enough to reflect the twisted, glistening eyes. It crouched like a child, but the posture was wrong, unnatural. "What do you want?" I called out, trying to sound firmer than I felt. A raspy giggle erupted from the corner, chilling me to the bone. "Play with us," it crooned, the voice a mix of innocence and horror. "No," I yelled, tightening my grip on the crowbar. "We won't play." The creature tilted its head, the eyes bright like glinting stones in the gloom. I watched as it slowly stood, inching closer, its small body unnaturally elongated. The shadows began to writhe around it, wrapping around like hungry serpents. "Get back!" Mark shouted suddenly, lunging toward me. In a panicked rush, I swung the crowbar, aiming for the thing in the corner. It shrieked, the sound piercing through the still air, a cacophony of rage mixed with glee. The creature flinched but didn't retreat, instead darting toward the door in a blur of motion. I felt the floor tremble beneath us, as if the cabin itself wanted to shake off this threat. "We need to get out, now!" Mark and I made for the door, adrenaline fueling our movements. When I reached for the handle, I felt a cold wind seep through the cracks, making the hairs on my neck prickle. "Wait," Mark said, gripping my arm. "What if they're outside?" "There's nowhere else to go," I replied, urgency creeping into my voice. Before I could twist the handle, a chorus of giggles erupted again, this time louder and more sinister. The door rattled violently, as if something was trying to break in. I turned and caught a glimpse of the grotesque faces smearing against the window, their eyes glinting in the flashlight's beam. Panic surged, and with a fierce determination, I threw the door open. It creaked like it hadn't been used in years. Darkness loomed outside, swallowing any semblance of safety. I hesitated on the threshold, but Mark pushed past me, darting into the wild night.
I followed, terrified what we'd find out there was worse than what we left behind. And just then, the figures at the window fell silent. A sense of dread filled the air, thick and oppressive. As I glanced back, the shadows faded into the cabin's dark interior, leaving behind an unsettling stillness. The giggling from inside wasn't done yet. It was merely waiting. The night closed in around us, thick and impenetrable. I could barely see 2 feet in front of me, but I kept moving, forcing my legs to keep pace with Mark, who was ahead, his silhouette a shadowy blur. The forest seemed alive, branches snapping underfoot like bones, and leaves rustling ominously. "Where are we going?" I called out, my voice breaking the silence, barely above a whisper. "Just away from the cabin," Mark shouted back, his breath heavy with fear. "We need to find the road." I stumbled, tripping over roots. My heart pounded, not just from the sprint, but from the images of those twisted little faces pressed against the cabin glass. The thought sent chills shooting down my spine. What did they want? Why did they look like that? As we pushed further into the trees, an eerie calm settled. The air felt charged, as if warning us of something just around the corner. I took in shallow breaths, scanning the darkness. Every shadow felt like a lingering threat. "Mark, do you think they followed us?" I asked, straining to hear any signs of pursuit. The woods were unnaturally still. "I don't know," he shook his head, finally slowing down to match my pace. "Let's just keep moving." Just as I felt a flicker of hope, a sudden rustling emerged from the underbrush. My skin prickled as I froze, instinctively reaching for the crowbar slung over my shoulder. "Did you hear that?" I said, my voice trembling. Before Mark could respond, a figure darted between the trees, just out of reach of the flashlight beam. I caught a glimpse of it, a small, distorted shape that moved too quickly, like a rabbit startled into flight. "Run!" Mark yelled, and we took off again, fear propelling us forward. The sound of laughter echoed through the trees, now layered with whispers that surrounded us, pressing in from all sides. "Play with us," the words drifted eerily, as if the wind had carried those wretched voices back to us. "What do they want?" I shouted in panic. "What do they mean?" Mark didn't answer. He was too busy looking back, his eyes wide in terror. I felt a burning need to stay close. The forest felt like a maze, with no clear paths. We were surrounded, lost. Then I heard it, a low thump, followed by a series of giggles, resonating ominously in the stillness. "Under the trees," one of them called, the voice all too familiar.
It was the same raspy tone from the cabin. A shred of rational thought clicked back into place. We have to try to find the road. But as we turned to flee, an explosion of laughter erupted again, sharp and quick.
The shadowy figures from the cabin emerged, their forms swirling in the darkness, their eyes glowing like coals. They were closer now, darting in and out among the trees, ready to pounce. Panic surged anew. "This way!" I shouted, darting left, pulling Mark along. We veered deeper into the woods, the laughter morphing into a cacophony that filled the air with dread. Then everything went quiet, too quiet. A sudden weightlessness settled, as if the world was holding its breath. I skidded to a halt, realizing too late that I was standing at the edge of a steep drop. I turned, eyes darting back into the shadows. "Mark!" I screamed, but it was as if my voice had disappeared into the void. That's when I saw it, the twisted form, no longer hiding in the shadows. It stood before me, grinning with a mouthful of jagged teeth. "Come play," it whispered. I couldn't move. My breath caught in my throat. The creature's grin widened, revealing those jagged teeth that glittered in the pale light filtering through the leaves above. I had to break free from this paralysis. I couldn't let it keep me here. I stumbled backward, falling over a root, flailing to regain my balance. Suddenly I heard Mark's voice, frantic but closer now. "Lara, where are you?" He broke through the trees, panic edged on his face as he caught sight of me. "Mark, run!" I managed to yell, trying to pull him back to safety. But the thing shifted, blocking our escape. I had a fleeting thought that maybe it couldn't move too quickly in the light. "Stay back," he shouted, pushing me behind him. The creature tilted its head, amusement dancing in its glowing eyes. "Don't be scared. We just want to play." It licked its lips, a grotesque gesture that made my stomach churn. "Play with us," echoed the chorus of faint voices from the dark, growing in volume. Shadows began to thicken around us, swirling like a storm. It felt as if the very woods conspired against us, leaving nowhere to flee. I reached for the crowbar, my fingers trembling around the cool metal. "We need to fight," I said, my heart racing even faster now. Mark nodded, but I could see his hands were shaking too. "I don't think we can take on all of them." "Then we distract them," I shouted, as another disturbing laugh rang out, closer this time. Without thinking, I lunged forward, swinging the crowbar at the twisted form. It ducked aside easily, letting out a shriek of laughter that echoed off the trees, so unnatural it sent chills down my spine. The laughter sharpened, echoing from all directions. "Now," I yelled to Mark, pulling him with me as we took off in the opposite direction. Pain shot through my leg, a sharp sting from a branch that snagged my pant leg. I ignored it, focusing on the need to escape. We stumbled deeper into the forest, branches clawing at us as we ran. Just when we thought we'd lost them, the shrieks and giggles grew nearer, like a twisted game of tag. "Over there."
I spotted a narrow path, barely visible through the underbrush. Mark hesitated. "What if it's a trap?" "Do you want to find out?" I breathed, the choice hanging in the air like a bitter fruit. Our fear of the unknown was eclipsed by the threat that nipped at our heels. With no time left, we dashed toward it. The path twisted and turned, leading us deeper into the woods. But the laughter shifted, echoing down the passage like specters chasing us. I risked a glance back, my heart sinking. The creature was following, flanked by several others, their gnarled figures lurching forward, gleefully picking up speed. "My flashlight!" Mark shouted, suddenly stopping. In his hand was the dying beam of light, flickering like a heartbeat. "It's not going to last!" I yelled, fear bubbling in my throat. "We can't stop now!" Then, out of nowhere, a rustle came from behind a clump of bushes. I turned, heart pounding again as I prepared to face whatever else the night had in store. What if this was an ambush? Then everything went dark. The flashlight flickered one last time before collapsing into silence. I felt my heart drop even further into the abyss. "Mark?" I called out, but the forest swallowed my voice whole. A voice broke through the darkness, chilling and finalized. "Come and play. It's so much more fun in the dark." A new terror settled in as I realized we were not alone. I felt the weight of eyes watching us, and the laughter swelled again, surrounding us like a suffocating fog. There was no choice but to keep moving. I pushed through the darkness, my senses heightened. Mark was just steps behind me, the urgency in my strides urging him to hurry. The air was thick with something that felt alive, wrapping around us and feeding off our fear as we stumbled deeper into the twisted maze of trees. "What now?" Mark's voice was laced with panic, echoing through the oppressive gloom. "We keep going," I exclaimed, desperately trying to stay focused. "Look for a way out."
We barreled forward, blindly grasping at fleeting shadows, but the laughter danced around us, ricocheting off the thick bark of the towering trees. The mocking giggles echoed, pretending to come from every direction, coaxing us deeper into a dread-filled game. Then we saw it, light, faint and flickering, draping across the forest floor like a beacon of hope. "This way!" I was propelled forward, eyes locked on the glimmer, urging Mark onward. The warmth of the light felt like salvation, but with every step, dread clawed at my insides. The shadows around us shifted, constricting, as if the woods themselves had grown restless at our attempt to escape. Just when we thought we could reach the brightness, the laughter escalated into manic chaos. "Join us," they sang, coaxing and mocking. "Stay and play." As we entered a small clearing illuminated by the moonlight, my breath caught in my throat. In the center stood the remnants of an old fire pit, long abandoned.
The flickering light came from dying embers glowing red, suffocated beneath ashes. "Is this it? Is this really all there is?" Mark panted, looking around frantically. Before I could respond, I felt it, an icy breath on my neck. I spun around, only to find myself face to face with the grinning figure. It was hollow-eyed and smiling, a gaunt caricature of innocence. "Let's play," it crooned. The others emerged from the shadows, their forms morphing in twisted rhythm. "Back!" I shouted, raising the crowbar between us, the fear surging as a protective instinct kicked in. "Stay away!" But they only laughed harder, circling like wolves, their eyes fixed on us, glinting with promises of something sinister. They danced around the fire pit, the trees leaning in closer as if to witness our fate. "Lara, what do we do?" Mark whispered, fear palpable in his voice. I felt cornered, the hairs on my neck prickling with every mocking laugh. "We need to face them," I said, a sudden calm settling within the storm of fear. "Together." He nodded, determination igniting in those wide eyes. We stepped forward, backs almost touching, as the figures danced nearer. I raised the crowbar threateningly, but they didn't flinch. Instead, they closed the gap, their laughter weaving into a sinister chorus. "Play with us forever," they chorused, stretching out their hands, limbs impossibly long and thin, fingers elongated into sharpened points. In that moment, everything became eerily quiet. They paused, their faces drawn, waiting for a response. I could see their eyes glimmering with twisted anticipation, like that of hungry children waiting for a treat. "Leave us alone," I found my voice, rising above the weight of their gaze. "We won't play your games." Their grins faltered, just for a second, and in that infinitesimal moment, their true forms flickered beneath the facade. The shadows they cast danced unsettlingly, revealing faces of long-forgotten fear. But then they erupted into laughter once more, a manic, echoing cacophony, sending chills crashing through my veins. The warmth of the fire pit flickered again, casting ghostly shadows around us. "Forever," they chanted, stepping closer, laughter mingling with ghostly whispers. "No," I yelled, brandishing the crowbar. "We're leaving." And then, just as quickly, I swept my arm through the ranks of laughing figures. The shadows shrank back, as if stung, recoiling from the light of the embers. In that instant, the figures lost cohesion, their outlines flickering like static, flickering close but never quite reaching us. The night erupted with newfound energy as I turned to grab Mark's arm, yelling, "Run!" We dashed through the clearing, the laughter trailing behind us like a dark wave, shrill, spoiling the moment of victory. As we pounded back into the trees, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Time became meaningless, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last as we sprinted through the underbrush.
I could hear whispers brushing against me, the sounds wrapping around my mind, pulling at the edges of my sanity. "Just come play." But we didn't stop. We ran, not knowing how far we needed to go, until dawn erupted in a blaze of orange across the horizon, spilling light across the canopy. We stumbled out of the woods, breathless, into the open space of a gravel road. Relief flooded through me, overwhelming against a backdrop of eerie calm. We turned back, looking into the dark expanse of trees that once tried to trap us. The landscape was still and silent now, a world that seemed ordinary yet sinister, as if nothing had ever occurred. "Did we lose them?" Mark panted, finally letting out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding.
"I think so," I murmured, though doubt clouded my thoughts. Long shadows loomed in the early light, blurring the line between reality and the strange world we had just fled. Weeks passed since that night, but the whispers stayed with me, sometimes echoing in quiet moments when I least expected. I never went camping again. Sometimes I even glanced back over my shoulder in the city, wondering if I had truly escaped the laughter, the games left behind in the darkness. It changed how I see things. I learned that not all laughter is innocent, and perhaps out there among the trees, those twisted little figures still waited, holding tight to their promises. The thought haunted me in a way that comforted more than frightened. Was I imagining it all? Would I ever know for sure? I moved to a different city afterward. Sometimes I wonder if the shadows still hold their ghostly laughter, if they still play in the woods, or if they found new companions to share their dark games with. But mostly, I try not to think about it.